Some members of Congress say if the country doesn't reopen soon, the economy will collapse. I'm Jesse Tenor in Washington, and I'll have that story coming up.
I'm Trevor Shirley in Washington, where the debate continues over how to safely reopen the U.S. economy. I've got that story coming up.
As the Paycheck Protection Program runs out of money, Republicans and Democrats are divided on the issue, blaming each other for playing politics. And Beasley-Drum reporting in Washington what lawmakers want to see going forward.
I'm Raquel Morton in Washington. Thousands of cities across the country are calling on Congress to send more money as many face potential budget cuts. I'll have that full story coming up.
Some high-profile lawmakers calling for ICE to scale back their raids and their operations. I'm Joe Khalil here in Washington, why they say their enforcement is actually a waste of resources during this pandemic.
To preserve the health of our citizens, we must also preserve the health and functioning of our economy. Over the long haul, you can't do one without the other, cannot be done. To keep vital supply chains running, these chains have to be taken care of so delicately. They're delicate, the balance is delicate. We want to deliver food and medical supply. We must have a working economy, and we want to get it back very, very quickly. And that's what's going to happen. I believe it will boom. A prolonged lockdown combined with a forced economic depression would inflict an immense and wide-ranging toll on public health. This includes a sharp rise in drug abuse, alcohol abuse, suicide, heart disease, and many other dimensions of physical and mental well-being. Moreover, many patients have put needed medical care on hold, creating entirely new hazards for public health. Our country has suffered. The world has suffered. 184 other countries have suffered. Therefore, my administration is issuing new federal guidelines that will allow governors to take a phased and deliberate approach to reopening their individual states. I've dealt with them now a long time, and we've had a great relationship. Democrat, Republican, the relationship has been good. This strategy is based on hard, verifiable data. I want to thank Dr. Birx for her incredible leadership in crafting these guidelines in consultation with scientists, experts, and medical professionals across government. Dr. Birx will explain the guidelines in more detail in a few moments. And Dr. Fauci has been absolutely terrific. We've all worked together, and we've worked together well. They are interested in the health of our country, and we're all interested in the viability and making us truly great again.
It's like choosing between cancer and a heart attack.
Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says as the death toll from the coronavirus rises, so do the country's unemployment numbers. According to the latest data, nearly 30,000 Americans have died from the virus, while 22 million have lost their jobs.
Lives are important. Livelihoods are important, too. These unemployment numbers just take my breath away.
Kennedy says if the country doesn't reopen soon, the economy will collapse.
If the United States economy collapses, the entire world economy will have collapsed, and we're going to end up burning down the village to save it.
But Kennedy warns when the economy opens back up, the number of coronavirus cases will increase.
And we've got to be ready for that.
Health officials aren't sure the U.S. is ready to reopen now because of the country's lack of widespread testing. Kennedy and his colleagues in the House leadership stressed the need for increased coronavirus testing. Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Even now, we don't have adequate tests, masks, PPE, and necessary equipment, which creates unnecessary death and suffering.
Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
Testing, tracing of the individual where they are and taking care of those hotspots very quickly. I think that's the key to what we have to look for as we move forward.
The pressure to reopen the country is building as more and more Americans protest stay-at-home orders and other social distancing measures. In Washington, I'm Jessie Tenor.
Some health experts and lawmakers say reopening the country too quickly could lead to a massive spike in sickness and death.
People that say, open the government, open the economy now, get back to work, we'll be back in a bad place again.
Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says while he understands Americans like these protesters in Columbus, Ohio, want an end to stay-at-home orders,
we shouldn't open the government until we know that this pandemic is in the rearview mirror, and it's not even close to that.
But others, like Indiana Representative Trey Hollingsworth, say it's time to form a plan to reopen.
We cannot continue to tell people shelter in place, stay in your home forever. We need a phase 2 and a better plan for how we deal and mitigate with these risks going forward.
Hollingsworth faced some criticism this week when he said Americans dying was the, quote, lesser of two evils, the other being a badly damaged economy.
What I was trying to convey is ultimately we have to recognize that there is economic cost.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy acknowledges that reopening the economy will cause coronavirus hotspots to break out.
But how can we deal with that? Testing, tracing of the individual where they are, and taking care of those hotspots very quickly. I think that's the key.
Experts say reopening will likely involve long-term changes, including extending social distance guidelines well into the future. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
President Trump selected members of Congress from both parties to serve on the advisory board, helping to decide how and when the U.S. economy should reopen.
The president and I don't always agree on a lot of issues, but in the middle of this kind of crisis, I think I can add value.
Democratic Senator Mark Warner is on the task force. Warner represents the swing state of Virginia and brings 25 years of business experience.
I'm as anxious as anyone to get our economy reopened, to get people back to normal life. But boy, we've got to do it the right way.
Over the past 4 weeks, 22 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits. Despite that, some fear returning to normal life too quickly will cause a wave of new coronavirus cases.
If we send people back too soon and the virus spikes, Americans' confidence in all of their leaders will dramatically diminish.
Economic experts say consumer confidence is directly tied to consumer spending, and that's a key factor in any economic recovery. Republican South Dakota Congressman Dusty Johnson agrees that the process must balance both economic and health interests.
But we can't, unfortunately, just pick an arbitrary date and stick to that come hell or high water.
Democrats on the committee stress that more widespread testing is necessary in order to determine when it's safe for Americans to return to work. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
The Small Business Administration says it's run out of money and cannot accept any new applications for a loan program to help small businesses through the coronavirus crisis.
I don't want a small West Virginia business having the door shut in their face because we ran out of money.
West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito says small businesses are key to our recovery.
Because this is what's going to really get our economy moving once we get the green light.
But Senate Democrats have so far blocked a $250 billion addition to the loan program. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says the blame lies with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell.
If Mitch is not talking and conferring at all with anybody in the Democratic Party and leadership or any of us that basically want to work with them.
Democrats say they want Republicans to increase funding for others who need immediate help fighting the pandemic. Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey.
We're going to have to be thoughtful about how to advance the agenda for families, for workers, for small business, and of course for those frontline heroes who are out there every day.
But House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says Democrats should take a look at the latest unemployment numbers.
I don't know what more that it takes. You got 5 million reasons today. You got 22 million reasons for this month.
McCarthy says Democrats should vote to expand the loan program now and come back to the other issues later. Democrats say they're willing to compromise if Republicans meet them in the middle. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Small business owners looking for an emergency coronavirus loan are getting this message on the Small Business Administration website. The federally funded Paycheck Protection Program ran out of money Thursday morning.
There is concern, there's fear.
Florida Republican Congressman Ross Spano says Congress knew this was coming and tried without success to pass an additional $250 billion in funding last week. That's in addition to the $350 billion the program already went through. Spano says if lawmakers don't figure it out soon, small businesses could shut their doors for good.
In the next 5 months, 5.5 million businesses could close.
On Thursday, the Labor Department announced 5 million more Americans filed for unemployment last week. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says this isn't a time to play politics.
I cannot understand, after watching another 5 million get unemployed, how Speaker Pelosi continues to say no.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says Democrats want to say yes, but they also want Republicans to agree to more money for healthcare workers and city and state governments.
We think they all need the resources.
Spano is telling Florida business owners to hang in there.
I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get an agreement that will allocate these necessary funds within the next several days.
The White House tweeted Congress must increase funding for the program immediately. The Senate may try again to pass the bill next week. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
We need the government's help.
Brian Barnett, president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, says cities across the country are being starved of the funding they need to survive the pandemic.
You have cities that are facing massive revenue shortfalls, increased expenses, with no support from the federal government.
Barnett says loss of revenue is putting more than a third of his own city services at risk.
We make $200,000 in the month of April for field rentals just for soccer games. That's a zero, full on to zero overnight.
He says Congress needs to send an additional $250 billion to cities immediately before many are forced to cut essential services.
Folks' first cuts probably aren't going to be public safety. It won't take long.
A new report shows that 88% of cities will have revenue shortfalls this year. More than half expect to have to furlough city employees. Illinois Congressman Darren LaHood says time is already running out in his district.
They're already talking about laying off 50 firefighters and police officers. They don't have the ability to print money. They don't have the ability to max out a credit card. And so we have to acknowledge that and work with them.
Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth agrees.
We need to make sure we get revenue directly into the local municipality government's coffers.
Last week, Democrats tried and failed to attach local and state funding to an emergency plan for small business loans. Negotiations are still underway. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
As hospitals struggle to get personal protective equipment, Senator Kamala Harris says resources are being wasted on immigration enforcement.
It's just a bad use of limited resources.
After ICE requested 45,000 N95 masks for its agents, Harris pushed back. ICE has since amended that request. Now the senator's demanding the agency scale back its raids.
We should have priorities that are not about enforcement and raids on those communities. We right now are strapped for resources.
Here is Department of Homeland Security trying to secure N95s masks to continue to incarcerate families.
Congresswoman Norma Torres says more ICE enforcement requires more protective equipment inside federal prisons, which means less for hospitals and medical centers. But Numbers USA, a group that supports limiting immigration, both legal and illegal, says that ICE's work is essential, just like local police, even in a pandemic.
So we are providing
these supplies to law enforcement officers. I don't see why Immigration and Customs Enforcement should be any different.
Chris Shimolensky with Numbers USA says for now, ICE is only conducting raids on violent offenders. He says lawmakers calling for ICE to stop are politicizing the crisis.
Using this pandemic as another reason to push their anti-enforcement agenda.
Shimolensky says the protective equipment that ICE agents require makes up a small fraction of our national demand. In Washington, I'm Joe Khalil.
Monday night, the information provided to me from our team members from the local first aid squads that went in to help remove some of the bodies. We removed 13 bodies on Monday night. There were believed to be a total of 17 there. The additional 4 that were left were going to be picked up by a local funeral parlor. As far as any of the statistics or numbers that are out there, I think it's important for everyone to realize that there is a pandemic going on. There is a backlog of information and numbers that are being thrown out there, from whether it's coming from inside the facility, from upwards at the state level, down to the local level.
Are any possible laws violated here?
Any possible laws, sir? No, not considering the circumstances, not from a law enforcement perspective at this time.
We picked up a load in California. It's a COVID-19 emergency relief load going from this part of the country to Virginia. My name is Sammy Lloyd. I'm a truck driver in America. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the stores. Stores are selling out. The shelves are going dry. It makes me feel kind of good because I know I'm bringing a product from Northern California all the way over to the East Coast that's going to be distributed out. A lot of people think that they just go to the store and get something, but they don't take into account where it comes from, and I know that I brought that, so it feels pretty good to know I'm helping out. In the last week, I went from Indiana to California, and California back to Virginia, and that's a lot of miles covered, and a lot of people, a lot of truck stops, and a lot of what I've seen is everybody's playing their part. When you start thinking about everything that you touch before COVID-19, to now, you're like, how did we get along so far? When I get back in the truck, first thing I do is I grab one of my Lysol wipes or Clorox wipe, and I've got a Perel in a spray bottle. I sanitize my hands, I sanitize my shifter, my steering wheel, my armrest, everything before I even start driving down the road, just in case I picked up or cross-contaminated by the time I got out and got back in. We live the cowboy lifestyle, but we're not driving cattle from point A to point B, we're driving freight. That's a part of the lonely road. During this pandemic with coronavirus, it's like everybody's on the same page, a lot more than they were just a month ago. I think it's opening up people's eyes where people's realizing, this is one world, one nation, one team. No matter what, all the differences aside, we're all in this together.
I don't have any income coming in. I don't get any food stamps. So it's just hard to get, any help right now.
They're eating more. A lot of people tell me they're going to have that extra 15 pounds from the stay at home, and we want our neighbors many are unemployed or jobs on furlough. We've seen a lot of restaurant workers come through where they simply just don't have a job, and that's their skills, and they don't have means to go and get another job right now.
He was my hero, my sports hero, my hero of what it meant to be a good dad, to be a good neighbor, all of it. I didn't suspect that it was COVID-19. I had no reason to suspect that he was sick, and he'd been really careful about not going out. Over time, his health started to decay in the hospital. He slipped into a coma. And eventually his kidneys failed, and they told us that they weren't going to be able to do anything more for him. Wednesday morning, they told us, in consultation with us, that that they would take him off the ventilator. And so then we were just waiting Wednesday to get the news. We know that we can't actually all come together and have a funeral, a service. So again, there's just a lot of unknowns, and we don't know what we're doing yet. And I don't really know when we'll figure that out, but we're trying.
It's rough. It's rough as the patient, and it's rough for the family members. So I wish people kind of understood just how tough that is, that this isn't just the flu. It's something completely different, and you're completely alone when you go up into the hospital, except for us. I took my phone, we put it in a plastic bag, and I brought it in and had, I think all of her family members were on there. There's probably like 6 or 7 of them. And I stood in there and just held it up to her ear, and they said their goodbyes, and they prayed with her. And then we all sang Amazing Grace, and I held her hand. We put on the gospel music. As sad of a moment as that was, I was very happy to be there with that family and for that patient. So it's kind of a little bit of both. It's really tough, but at the same time, it makes me feel like I'm doing what I should do. I'm doing what I was called to do.
There's a robot now.
Yeah.
Coming home.
Yeah.
I'd almost say uncanny. And it's very careful. It stops for not only intersections, but just for alleys. Well, I think it's the sign of things to come. But at the same time, somebody has to put the bags into the robot. And when the robot arrives, or when I get home with my stuff, probably we're going to wipe it off with a Clorox solution.
So I think today we have 5 robots running. We've had up to 10. It depends on their availability. And right now, some of them are out mapping, so the distance gets further. We got that all situated with the delivery and pickup when we closed the store April 1st to customers. And so it's taken us a good 2 weeks to get our legs under us and get our grocery delivery and ordering system in place. And literally, it's like the highlight of people's day when they get a robot. It's so fun and funny and just exciting and different. And it's a great distraction.
Well, I think it's interesting, but I don't think I will rely on it once we can go back to normal shopping.
Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I always had wished school wasn't a thing until now, because it takes up 6 hours of our day and it gives us something to do.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think it brings the neighborhood together when we're supposed to be apart. Brings us together safely from a distance. For the kids, I think it's good to have some sort of structure to their day and normalcy, whatever the new normal may be.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled